Welcome once again to Cinemaholics. I'm John Negroni. I'm the box office columnist for Atom Tickets, head writer of Cinemaholics.com. I write books. He's a pop culture writer for Cinema Blend, and he also reviews films for Cinemaholics.com. It's Will Ashton.
I was debating, should I do the Arnold impression? Should I not do the Arnold impression? It seems like the impressions aren't being well received by you. So just you. I don't know. I don't mean listeners tune in right in to if you enjoy my
they seem neutral so
impression. Far. Yeah. I it's a one-way street, so I can't tell. But so maybe somewhere in the episode I'll sneak it in, but for now just keep to me.
I was gonna say, if you're not gonna do it now, you got to sprinkle it in somewhere.
Oh, of course. I can't tease it, then not divulge it somewhere. I'll have to sneak it in somehow.
Well, as you can tell from that little tease, we are going to be talking about Terminator Dark Fate on this week's episode of Cinemaholics, along with a lot of other films worth some discussion. But for now, you can find more episodes of Cinemaholics, including our full archive. It's all on cinemaholics.com with written content, bonus podcasts, everything Cinemaholics right in one place. You can write into the show anytime as well. We'd love to read your emails. Send us a quick email at cinemaholicspodcast@gmail.com. Let us know what's on your mind. And please consider supporting us and becoming a supporter of the show by donating to our monthly Patreon. Just go to patreon.com/cinemaholics to find out more about that and what the tiers and perks and all of that include. And as a segue into our off topics for this week, one of those perks is that you already have early access to our latest episode of Extra Milestone. That's our bonus podcast where we discuss a film anniversary once a month of a film, typically like a classic film. And this month, we chose the 1994 Tim Burton film, Ed Wood. And that's on our Patreon out right now. We discussed that film, of course, with Sam Noland, our co-host on the show. And Will, what did you think of our conversation about Ed Wood? Do you think it turned out all right?
Yeah, I mean, I haven't had a chance to listen back to it, but I don't know. It's one of those movies I could talk about endlessly. It's a really tremendous film, and I enjoy talking about it immensely. So I hope it turned out well, and it seemed like you enjoyed it, so I'm glad to hear that.
Yes, I got to edit it. I had the pleasure of editing that episode, and it was a good time had by me, that's for sure. Very, very funny conversation, but also very insightful. And again, I've said this like 20 times. I'm just so glad it's our first 90s film that we're covering on Extra Milestone. It's perfect. But please help us out on determining next month's Extra Milestone. The episode for all of you is going to be out later this week on the Cinemaholics podcast feed. You're going to see it pop up in a few days. When it does, just go to the show notes and you're going to see before you listen to the episode or after. All of the films that we're considering for next month, I won't list them all out here. Maybe next week we'll devote a little bit of time to that just in case some of you have not listened to the episode yet. But we always want help, so send us an email or comment, or if you're a patron, you'll be getting the patron poll to determine what we're going to talk about next month. And there are some good films on that list. I think we're going to have a really good November milestone for sure.
Yeah, I was trying to remember what was on the list for November, and I'm drawing a blank, but I remember there were some good titles, and I'll be curious to see what we get picked, or what gets picked for us.
I think I can name almost all of them from memory. Let's see, there's Monty Python's Life of Brian, Woman Under the Influence, Godzilla, the 1954 version. Yeah. And now I'm blanking on the rest of them.
Nightmare on Elm Street, I think was one.
Yeah, that was the 80s one we were considering. So
yeah,
all of those, and I think some more. So we'll go in a little bit more detail on that next week for sure. And of course, when you listen to Extra Milestone, Sam runs down the full list with us, so you get a sense of which films might be the most interesting ones for us to discuss. But speaking of discussion, let's get into our question of the week. Last week, we asked the listeners, what is your favorite legacy sequel in honor of Terminator Dark Fate? So Terminator Dark Fate is one of those weird sequels where it sort of ignores all of the films in between, right? So Terminator Rise of the Machines, a third one, Terminator Salvation, and Terminator Genesis, they all have these like plots and twists and time travel hijinks. And the new film, Terminator Dark Fate, is like, none of that happened. We're just going to do Terminator 2, a sequel to that. And we saw the same sort of thing last year with with Halloween. We kind of got something similar with the Star Wars movies, which sort of ignore the prequels and are just like, all right, we're back. So we asked the listeners, what are some films you would like to see? And what are some of your favorite legacy sequels that have come out? And these are the comments we got. We not a lot of lengthy comments, so we're just going to go through all the suggestions people put out there. So first one is from Cloud9, and I'm very curious what you think about this one, Will. Cloud9 said, "Hear me out. The Godfather. Ignore part 3 and just start anew." So ignore everything that happened in The Godfather and just do a sequel to Godfather Part 2. What do you think?
Well, here's the thing about Godfather Part 3 is that I definitely think it's the weakest of the 3, obviously. Like, it's not as good as 1 or 2. But I think the last shot or the last scene of Godfather Part 3 is perfect. Like, I really love how it ends. So, I mean, I can see the reasoning behind it, but I'm fine with Godfather 3 as the last one.
Yeah, I can't say I'm totally on board. I think that you're probably never going to make a film as good as Godfather Part 2. It's one of the greatest films of the 20th century. So I guess trying to make another one like live up to that is just, I don't know. I couldn't see it. And Francis Ford Coppola would probably have to make it, and I just don't think he wants to.
Though, could you imagine if like the Russo brothers got like a Godfather? He would lose his mind.
Sometimes you just say things and I'm like, you're just trying to start something, aren't you? Yeah. I love it.
Yeah.
Thank you for commenting, Cloud9. We have another one here from Captain Crunch Time, a longtime listener of the show. Captain Crunch Time said, "I was going to say Star Trek: The Next Generation, but I suppose the new Picard show sort of gets to that. Otherwise, I'd love to see a reboot sequel of The Matrix. I know they're doing a 4th one, but it sounds like a continuation as opposed to a fresh start so far." All right, The Matrix. That's an interesting one. Definitely more recent. So the first one was 1999. So I guess he's saying you would ignore Revolutions and Reloaded.
Mm-hmm. That's the impression I got. Yeah, but what do you think? I'm not entirely sure what's going on with the new movie. I don't know if it is like ignoring the past 2 or if it is a continuation from. It is
because I think Morpheus is in it and it recognizes what happened in the sequels. I don't think it's reverting anything at all, as far as I know.
Well, I just didn't know, because isn't Carrie-Anne Moss and Keanu Reeves coming back for it?
I think so, but we don't know to what capacity, right? Like, we don't know if it's going to be because like they're ignoring the second 2 films, or if they're just doing some weird thing. But I guess to the heart of the question, it's less about like continuing or ignoring the sequel, and it's more about just bringing the gang back together, right? And sort of like capitalizing on that nostalgia. That's kind of what Terminator Dark Fate is doing, right? So I guess in the spirit of that question, it kind of applies.
Yeah, I mean, depending on what they do with the new one, it might fit. Otherwise, yeah, I could see that.
Did you know that Morpheus dies in the Matrix canon, the previous Matrix canon, but through the online game that they did?
No. They just kill him off?
It's very weird. So like after they came out with Matrix Revolutions, Morpheus is like, he survives, right? Spoilers. But in the online game that they did, the Matrix Online, Morpheus dies like a few episodes in of that online game. And it was one of those things where it's like so unceremonious. He's just like killed off by some assassin, and it's dumb. But
I thought they were gonna it's like, all right, time to log off the Matrix and get my lunch break, and then like he falls down the steps.
Yeah, it's just 5 days from retirement.
Yeah.
Yeah, it sounds like the Morpheus we know, right? Clumsy and no.
Right, clumsy, a goof, always cracking jokes.
What a klutz. The comic relief of the movies, for sure. Yeah. All right, this answer is from Best Fiend, which I guess is a username, and I guess that's coming from, isn't that a Greg Sestero thing?
Sort of. Well, the movie title was Best Friends, but the way that it was italicized was like, or titled, it was just like the R was in parentheses, so it could say Best Fiends, but the title was Best Friends. All
right, well, either way, this comment comes from Best Fiend, who said, "Just walked out of the lighthouse after listening to your conversation. I need to process one a bit. No idea how I feel yet, but one thing I can say for certain is that I'm glad I saw this." So not an answer to the question of the week. But I read the wrong one. But regardless, it's good that we read it out loud, because it's Best Fiend.
Yeah, I mean, I'm glad. It sounds like they at least got something out of it, so I'm happy to hear that.
All right, and then James said, "I guess Ghostbusters would make for a good Legacy sequel, but I guess that's already happening with Jason Reitman."
Yeah, the 2020 thing.
Right, but that doesn't ignore Ghostbusters 2, right? So it's
I think they mean the 2016 one, like ignoring that. Which that wasn't a sequel.
Right. That's why I'm kind of thinking that doesn't
Right.
totally apply. Because, yeah, you're not really ignoring sequels. I guess, though, Halloween was similar in a sense, right? Because the third one was a bit of a spinoff. So, yeah, there's some gray area there.
But that one is that would only apply if it was ignoring Ghostbusters 2.
Sure. They might be doing that, though. We don't know. Well, we don't know.
That's what I mean. Yeah.
So but, I guess we are. Yeah, Ghostbusters is one that's coming out. And then this last one's from Fade into Black, who said, I really dug last year's Halloween, so I'd have to say do the same for Nightmare on Elm Street, which we just mentioned might be our next milestone. Okay. So Nightmare on Elm Street, that's gotten so many sequels. I guess they never really have done that, have they? They've done remakes.
Sort of. Well, they did that kind of with New Nightmare, but not exactly.
Yeah, did that one ignore it? Because I'm not as caught up on all the Elm Street sequels.
Well, that's the thing, yeah. I mean, I'm not either. I've only really seen the first one. But I know New Nightmare is kind of like a meta twist where it's the actors are it's removed from the series, and that the actors themselves are being hunted by a Freddy type. So
yeah,
I don't know. I mean, I'm guessing in this case though, they just mean ignore everything after the first one, and then just doing because that's what happened with the Halloween last year, right? They just ignored everything from the first one onward.
Right.
And was trying to act like it's a new Halloween 2.
And I think this sort of thing works better when it's a really well-known franchise, like Jurassic World kind of did that. They sort of just ignored the second two films.
Right.
And I think that's more significant than if Friday the 13th, if you ignored all those other extra movies, I don't know. I mean, how many people really watch that movie for the story and would remember those characters anyway?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I was gonna say, are those all the comments, or is there another one after that?
That's all of them. Yeah,
okay.
There were a few that I was wondering if people would say nobody said Indiana Jones.
Yeah,
nobody, because I was thinking of what are some of the big franchises from
the
70s and 80s.
I was thinking Alien, ignoring everything after 2.
That was one of the first ones I thought of. Just go right from Aliens, because Alien 3. I know a lot of people. It has its fans, but a lot of people mark that as okay, that's when it really went off the rails.
But apparently that's what Neil Blomkamp was going to do with his movie, and then it got
that could have been so good.
Yeah,
could have been good. Yeah,
but I mean, I guess it depends how you feel about Prometheus. I guess they kind of do it in reverse. But that's more of a Rise of the Planet of the Apes kind of thing.
Right? Yeah, it's just prequels. Yeah, it's definitely not the same kind of thing. It's not like I think for this to qualify, it would be a third Alien film, and yes, Sigourney Weaver is in it, right?
Yeah.
So definitely, obviously not the case.
Yeah, I mean, depending on how these legacy sequels go, I'd be down for that with Alien.
Yeah, I would too. So those are just a few. Thank you for writing in, letting us know which legacy sequels are on your mind. And it's funny because I'm sure Hollywood has a whole archive, a Library of Congress full of this stuff that they've already considered. So I have a feeling we'll see most of these films at one time or another. And some of them mentioned are already in production. I
mean, what's happening with Suicide Squad? Is that kind of a reboot, or is that a sequel?
It's a soft reboot.
Okay.
I think James Gunn is kind of retooling, rebranding it. It's because it's just called, I think, The Suicide Squad.
Yeah.
It's not even Suicide Squad 2.
Yeah. So, I don't know. I could also be down for if Tim Burton ever came back to the Batman series.
Yeah.
Some kind of old Batman with Michael Keaton. What was that? Is that Batman or Dark Knight Returns with old Batman?
Yeah, that's the spin-off comic. But you could do something like that. That could kind of fit.
I could see something I'd be down with that with Michael Keaton.
We've already kind of gotten a Dark Knight Returns with Batman v Superman. It doesn't really work if you don't have Superman. But, I mean, sure, there are plenty of comics, at least of that vein, that would fit. And a way to sort of close the book on the Tim Burton Batman, that would be pretty interesting. Get Michael Keaton back. Maybe it's I know people have really always wanted a Batman Beyond movie, and you could do something like that with Batman Beyond, where Michael Keaton is the older Bruce Wayne, and then you have somebody playing Terry McGinnis, and you could have something really cool with that. Because I mean, people love Batman Beyond. I know I do.
Yeah, I mean that would be one I'd be down for sure.
All right. Well, those are just a few. We already got a Superman Richard Donner one, right, with Superman Returns, so we don't need to worry about that.
Yeah.
That's done. we got Superman Returns, and it's fine.
Yeah, that was the legacy sequel before it was the hip trend.
Right. Yeah, it was the hipster sequel. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that was our question of the week. Thank you for answering. Next week, we want to know, in honor of Dr. Sleep, which is the kind of sequel to The Shining. I shouldn't say kind of sequel. It's a sequel, but I guess I just struggle to call it that. We want to know which Stephen King adapted movie or TV series was better than the source material it was based on. So we're looking at things like Shawshank Redemption, Stand By Me, Misery, It, Carrie. There are tons of Stephen King adapted movies and TV shows. So we want to know which one was better than what Stephen King actually wrote. And I have a feeling no one's going to say Dark Tower, but we want to know. So try to go for deep cuts too, because a lot of people are probably going to say the really obvious ones. Like I think The Shining, like I think a lot of people would agree. Right. Like I don't even like The Shining, and I agree that it's better than the book. But a lot of people might have maybe one that I haven't even heard of. I definitely haven't read a ton of Stephen King work. Right. So this could be an interesting question of the week.
Yeah, I'm curious if people are going to put The Mist, which is a movie I don't particularly care for, but I know it has its strong defenders, and I don't know how it compares to the source material. But that's one of those stories where I think Stephen King, like the way they end it, I think he liked better than how he ended his story. So I don't know. There's, like you said, there's so many Stephen King adaptations. It's there's a plethora of choices to be made.
That's right. And I want to hear some weird ones. Yeah. I want to hear some ones that I've never heard of or ones I haven't thought about in a long time. So I can't wait to see what people write in. So you can do that by going to cinemaholics.com, go to our latest podcast episode for this, and just put it in the comments or send us an email, cinemahawkspodcast@gmail.com with your thoughts.
Think it won't do Maximum Overdrive?
Whew. I've never read the source material for that because it's like, what, a short story or a novella?
It's like, yeah, I think it's like a short story called Trucks or something like that.
I have a feeling that the source material is better for that one because you can imagine it. Whereas like the movie, I just remember being so clumsy. I guess though the movie has such a goofy charm to it with the kills and everything. But. And
AC/DC and all that. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, what's like problem with like, I think a lot of Stephen King adaptations that this like the way that he writes. I know you're not a big fan of his, but I feel like the way he writes stuff is made compelling, but then like when you do like an objective, like showing it in a film, it just often becomes goofy just because, you know, like you have to see it in a different light. And it's just like, oh, outside of how he wrote it, this seems like a really weird idea for a thing. And yeah, so we'll see. I'm curious what people will pick.
Yeah. I'm curious. Are you going to rewatch The Shining before we see Dr. Sleep this week?
Yeah. I mean, I told you off the air, I'm currently reading the book. So I think I'm going to finish the book, watch the original movie again. I don't know if they did a 4K restoration. I don't know if that's available outside of the limited theatrical run it had, but if I can get my hands on that, I might check that out before I see the new one because I'm curious to see what they did for the remastering.
Yeah, and on the topic of some of the movies we're watching this week, there's a lot of stuff coming out, and so you and I are going to be seeing Irishman. I think both of us are going to be seeing Ford v Ferrari. We may have to do some bonus episodes or something because those are just advanced films. Then we have so many like wide release films coming out. I don't know how we're going to fit all this in, but you know, we have Dr. Sleep, we have Midway, Last Christmas, Playing with Fire, which you already saw. It's a lot, and we'll probably talk about it off the air how we want to handle this. But just letting listeners know, you may see an extra bonus film, bonus podcast, just because we probably won't be able to squeeze this all into one conversation. And one film though, I missed my screening for. And I'm curious, like Motherless Brooklyn. I want to see this. This is Edward Norton. Yeah. I want to see it, but it's not really playing anywhere around here. Is it playing in Pittsburgh?
Oh yeah, it's playing here. I just haven't had a chance to see it.
Yeah, I may take a second look to see if it's playing in the Bay Area. Maybe I just missed it or something like that. I don't know.
Yeah, I think
I want to catch it.
I think it got a fairly wide release. I mean, it's a Warner Brothers film, so I think it got like an okay. I mean, not like Terminator: Dark Fate size release, but you know, a sizable one all the same. Huh. Yeah, it was like a $50 million production, right? It was pretty sizable.
Well, they have Oscar written on this, and based on what I've read, it has its fans, but this doesn't seem like the kind of film that's going to go a long way for award season. But I could be wrong. It's pretty early days. Yeah,
well, no, I don't think. I mean, just based on the reviews and what I've heard, like you said, it doesn't seem like there's that many strong defenders, like, you know, people who are like, yeah, it wasn't that bad.
I've seen a handful of people be like, this film is amazing, but yeah, they're getting kind of drowned out by, I think the consensus is a little different.
Not enough, I don't think, to warrant serious awards contention, but who
right.
knows?
I just want to see it for myself, because
yeah, sure.
I definitely, I want to have my own take, and I'm just very curious about it. It looks so different. I guess we'll put it that way.
Yeah. I mean, did you see his first movie that he directed?
No, we brought it up in the show before.
Right.
Yeah, I know you've talked about it, and I still haven't seen it, and
I haven't either.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
That's Motherless Brooklyn, coming to a Cinemaholics review near you, probably at some point. Last thing I wanted to bring up before we get into our reviews for this week. Okay, so this is a little complicated. So I work for Apple, and Apple
you're allowed to say that?
I'm allowed to say it.
Okay.
Just be cool, Will. So Apple TV Plus just came out this week. It is a streaming service, and there are certain things that I don't want to get into with it, right? I don't want people to listen to what I have to say about Apple shows and be like, well, he works for them. And so I kind of have to walk that line. I don't think anybody should come to me for any sort of breaking down or critique or anything like that on these shows, because it's a clear conflict of interest.
What if I want to get my laptop fixed? Can I come to you for that?
If you want to come all the way to San Francisco, yes,
sure.
Yes, I will. Right. I will help you with anything you need with your laptop. Sure. I'm your guy. And to be super clear, I don't work on any of these shows. I don't do their marketing. I don't have anything to do with Apple TV Plus in its production or anything like that. There are certain things I do that are tangentially related to Apple TV Plus. That's about it. But I'm bringing this up because I don't want to be I just kind of want to be forthcoming. And I do want to bring up that I am watching these shows, not because it's my job, but because, wouldn't you, if you, let's say you work for Arby's and they came out with a streaming service, you'd watch it, right?
What's Arby's got?
That was the first thing I thought of. Arby's has a really good shake called the Jamocha Shake. So their first TV show is going to be a docuseries about the making of Jamocha. Well, duh. They're working on it.
Well, let's get some names. Who are some names we can get for this streaming service?
Roasted.
Do you think we can get Chiwetel Ejiofor for a show?
I thought you were talking about the name of the streaming service itself. And so I was starting to think of
no. I mean, we gotta get some talent if we're gonna get this Arby's streaming service out the ground. We gotta get some names for this. Who's a big name that we can reasonably get for Arby's?
We need some blue collar people, right? Because it's Arby's,
right.
The truck drivers of America. Yeah.
So we're bringing back blue collar comedy tour for Arby's streaming service.
Bill Engvall is fronting this whole thing.
The Bill Engvall show, the reboot. We're bringing back Jennifer Lawrence. We're bringing everyone else who was on that show back.
It's like the Force Awakens of TV shows.
Man.
Yeah. But my that's all to say. I am watching these shows. I have opinions on them, but I'm not a resource for anybody who's curious about the shows and wants to know if they're good, because I can't really honestly be able to do that without it being a whole mess. I did watch the morning show. This is the Steve Carell and the Reese Witherspoon and Jennifer Aniston show, which is about, it's a Me Too kind of story, I guess you should say, where Steve Carell plays a version of Matt Lauer from NBC News, and he gets kicked off of his own show. That's how this starts. And Jennifer Aniston sort of has to pick up the pieces. She's like the Mika Brzezinski of the Morning Joe, talk show, morning show circuit. Yeah, it's like a mix of Matt Lauer, and then it's a mix of that whole dynamic with Morning Joe.
Okay, so not like a Kathy Lee Gifford kind of thing. It's more political.
Oh, it's pretty political. It doesn't have a lot of there's not a lot of politicians in the show. They're straight up they consider themselves reporters, right?
Okay, so it's not one of those morning shows they do CBS. That's not what's the one they do
sort of This Morning,
the Al Roker one. What's he on?
Oh, I've never seen that one.
Oh, I forget. I don't know. I don't know much about morning TV, so I'm not an expert here.
That's the thing, is you don't have to follow along with this show, because it's just sort of following the archetypes of that sort of dynamic. If you have any sort of understanding of how it works, you can kind of get into it that way. I watched the first episode, and I'm not going to say what I think about it, I guess, but I watched it. I had a good time watching it. There's a lot of shows that like just came out on this service, and I am going to see the Jason Momoa one. I think there's a few episodes of that out right now.
Are you going to see it?
Jeez. It's called C. And, to be honest, a lot of people have been saying the best one is For All Mankind, which is like the what if one, where it's like, what if the Soviet Union had gotten to the moon before America? And that's the one that's been getting the best reviews so far. Yeah, it's a lot like that. And honestly, though, the one that I want to see next that I've been really curious about is Dickinson, which is the Emily Dickinson show starring Haley Steinfeld.
Heard that was good.
So I'm going to be digging into that. Will, you're going to have to be the listener's resource for reviews on it because, I just,
What if I am like, it sucks and everyone at Apple tangentially involved or otherwise should be fired for making this show?
That's your right, Will. I mean, this is your show too, so you just got to say how you feel.
All right. So you're not going to be like, well, hang on.
Oh, yeah. I'm not going to defend myself. You kidding me?
Oh, yeah. All right. I'll keep that in mind. Not that I would ever. I don't think I'd ever get that mad at anything that Apple TV has made, but who knows?
Yeah.
We'll see.
That's the morning show. Apple TV Plus is, I think you could watch it for free for a year if you have bought an Apple product. It depends on the Apple product. I think it's like an iPhone or a Mac or an iPad and maybe a couple other things. If you bought one of those since September 10th, you can get a free year. And then like anytime in the future, you can do that. But otherwise, I think there's a free trial as well. So
I got welcome to it as we were talking.
That's right. Yeah. You mentioned you got an email, right? Welcome to Apple TV, Will.
Yeah. Welcome. Pleasure to be here.
I guess, did you buy an Apple product recently or?
Maybe. I don't know. Like what do you consider recently?
In the last month, I guess, because it would have been.
No, not in the last month.
Oh, no, I guess so.
Okay.
All right. That is the morning show and a very awkward discussion about our employers. So.
Well, not my employers, but yeah.
Yeah. Just mine. Maybe next week we'll get into yours.
Yeah.
We mentioned your employers on the show plenty of times, right?
Oh yeah. No, I mean, it's not a secret. I work for Cinema Blend. You say it at the top of every episode, but right. Or are you talking about the theater I work for? But
I was referring to both.
Okay. Yeah, we can talk about both as much as you want. I have no clauses as far as I know, unless Cinema Blend makes like a new streaming service, then I'll have to hold my tongue on whatever they make. But otherwise, I should be free to discuss whatever.
Right on. All right. Well, let's get into our reviews this week, starting with Terminator Dark Fate. Terminator Dark Fate is the 6th film in the Terminator franchise, and it does away with all of the lore and plot of the 3rd, 4th, and 5th films, and it kind of brands itself as a direct continuation to Terminator 2 or T2, Judgment Day, which came out in 1990, right? 1991, around that time?
Yeah, I believe so, yeah. It's one of those two, early 90s.
Yeah. It picks up in our modern day, the kind of near future. And even though Skynet, the AI that creates the Terminators in the future, they were prevented from coming about in the 1990s, a new cybernetic AI eventually came about called Legion, and it too is sending Terminators, suspiciously identical Terminators, back in time to prevent the rise of a human resistance that will try to stop them from taking over the world. This time, they are trying to take out a mysterious young woman named Danielle, played by Natalia Reyes. And the film is very coy about why she's important very early on in the film. But the formula to this movie is still the same. Terminator goes back in time, is trying to kill her, and someone else is trying to save her. A woman named Grace, played by Mackenzie Davis, who is not a Terminator, but actually an enhanced human who can hold her own in combat well enough against these killer machines to briefly keep Danielle out of danger. Soon, they unwittingly have the help of Sarah Connor, who is back in the franchise and played once again by Linda Hamilton. And from there, the film is essentially an odyssey of these women on the run, and it's a journey to get some answers as to why is this happening and what their future really entails.
So you're here to protect her. What are you? Never seen one like you before. Almost human.
I am human. Just enhanced. You know, increased speed and strength, which means I can rip your throat out if you piss me off, so don't. Your turn.
My name is Sarah Connor. When I was about her age, a Terminator was sent to kill me, to stop the birth of my son, Jon. Leader of the Resistance. We changed the future. Saved 3 billion lives. You're welcome.
Will, what did you think of Terminator Dark Fate? And what do you think of the Terminator franchise at large? So the last one of these films came out before we started doing Cinemaholics, and I'll be honest, I didn't watch it. That's the only Terminator film I've never seen. And so I feel like I don't have to watch it.
I thought for a second you were saying you didn't see Terminator Dark Fate.
Oh.
And I was like, well, this is going to be weird. Well, that's the thing is that like prior to this film coming out, because I rewatched 1 and 2 to watch this one, because it's been a while since I've seen T1 and T2. I think I watched them both like in middle school. And then I've watched like parts of them throughout the years, but that was like the first time. This is the first time I had seen both of them in their entirety since then. And initially I was of the opinion that it was like a slide. Like T1 was the best. Then T2 was good, but not quite as good. T3 is okay. And it not the worst. I don't think it's quite as bad as its reputation would suggest, but it's another one. It's been a while since I've seen it, so I don't remember it as well, but I remember it more than Salvation, which I just remember being... I had like 1 or 2 good action beats, but generally just kind of disposable and forgettable and kind of hindered by what was a not particularly strong performance I felt from, what's his face?
Sam
Avatar
Worthington?
dude? Sam Worthington.
Sam Worthington, yeah.
Not Sam Westinghouse, as we found as we met last week.
Yeah.
But yeah, Genesis, which I'm surprised you haven't seen. I thought that was like the de facto bad Terminator film. It was just like a all around not particularly good film, I thought.
Which is why I skipped it, because I just saw no point.
And I mean, besides like a kind of fun performance from Arnold Schwarzenegger, as per usual, it was just, I don't know, it was just a poorly made film. And I thought it was doing stuff that was like actively trying to like go against 1 and 2. It's like, it's bad enough that you're not a good Terminator film, but it's like, you don't have to like try to erase the timeline of the first 2 movies. It just, your hubris is showing, it seems. So, I just wasn't a fan of that. And it's one I have no, I don't know. I'm debating rewatching 3 just because like I said, it's been a while since I've seen it, and I might check out Salvation again just for curiosity's sake, because I don't remember it particularly well. But yeah, I have no interest in ever seeing Genesis again. I can't imagine there'll be another Terminator film that's quite as bad as that, but who knows? I don't know how many more they're going to make of these. I have to imagine, though, by 2029, they'll stop, because at that point, the future will be present.
Well, before you continue, I guess I'll go through my franchise baggage real quick, and then we can. Yeah. So the first movie of these I actually saw Rise of the Machines in theaters before I saw the first 2 Terminator films. So but I knew what they were about. I knew the twist from the first one. I knew kind of what had happened in the second one. And then I saw Rise of the Machines when I was like 12 years old. So we didn't have the Terminator films on home video, right? So they weren't really on TV at the time. I don't remember. So I just didn't, I just watched Rise of the Machines, but I picked up on it and I was like, oh, okay, I see. This is probably what happened. It wasn't until a year or 2 after that I did watch the first 2 films, and I loved them. T2 is my favorite for sure, but I really, really loved the first one. And it's like simplicity, and it just has like such a really good, like shabby edge to it. It's also like the best at like having a suspension of disbelief, because a lot of the technology really matches like the really corny cheesy story they have there, or like the whole concept of the time travel thing gets harder and harder as like our technology progresses, and they're always trying to like find out ways to get around that. But it's a struggle because I just think that first one came out at the right time for that sort of time travel thing to be wonky but not distracting, and then T2 is like right on the edge of it, but it makes up for it with just how jaw-dropping those set pieces are. I mean, and also just has such a great ending, and I just really love the story behind it and what it's trying to say. Did you ever watch the Sarah Connor Chronicles?
Oh, I saw the pilot. I don't think I might have seen the first like few episodes, like 3 or 4 of them, but I didn't keep up with it. I remember thinking it was okay.
I liked it. I saw the first season. I
remember thinking it was better than most of the sequels, but not enough to like, it wasn't good enough. I remember for me to like feel like it was worth a weekly investment, if that makes sense. Like it was okay, but you liked it a good bit.
Yeah. It was again, probably about the same as you. Like it's okay, but I definitely liked Summer Glau being a Terminator.
Oh yeah,
that was just really good casting. And then I liked it better than I remember. Rise of the Machines just like was really depressing, even for like me as a 12-year-old. I thought it was so bleak, and
I like the ending of Rise of the Machines. Like I like that it just like ends that way. It's just like that's the end of the movie.
Yeah, I guess I don't know. Sure. Just kind of it feels kind of limp by comparison to the second one, and the first one to an extent.
Yeah.
But yeah, and then Terminator Salvation. I just. That was one of those things where the trailer gives away the big twist of the movie. They do that a lot though in these, like the trailers, the marketing give away, like in every Terminator film, the marketing gives away something huge. I think except for maybe the first one.
Definitely Genesis did. They gave away like a huge thing, I remember.
Right. Yeah. The Jason Clarke thing. And then Terminator Salvation gives away like the secret about Sam Worthington's character, and which is crazy because like you're watching it and you're like, when are we going to find out the thing we all know? You know? Yeah. And I don't remember if Rise of the Machines had something like that. Maybe that's the exception, but yeah. And then there's Terminator Dark Fate, which that trailer gives away something that doesn't happen until like the very end.
Yeah. I mean, I don't remember T3 having like any big like twist. It seemed like a pretty straightforward film from what I can recall.
Yeah, that's why it's just kind of okay, right? Like it doesn't have enough subversion to really be at the level of the first 2 films, but it's definitely not incompetent.
Yeah, it's just fine. Like it's like okay.
But all right, that's Terminator franchise according to us.
Well, I was gonna say real quick that like that was my stance initially, but then I was rewatching the 2, and I actually think, to much of my surprise, I think I actually like T2 now more than I like T1, which I wasn't anticipating because I was definitely more of the T1 side for most of my life, and now I'm on the other side of the coin, and I don't know what to say. It's different on this side of the party.
It's a respectable position to like T1 the best. Yeah. So yeah, either way, I mean, you're loving a pretty good movie.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I really enjoyed both these films a lot, and I respect them a lot for what they did for the genre and how they built Jim Cameron's career and Arnold Schwarzenegger's career and Linda Hamilton's career. And
I like how you call him Jim Cameron, like he's your neighbor.
Yeah. Oh, we go back. Yeah, we go back. So yeah, I mean, I'll enjoy those first 2 movies a lot. And I just think I'll probably always go back. I think most people probably go back and forth on the first 2 just because they're both just really solid movies. And I think I just appreciated like the scope of the second one while still being a pretty competent and engaging character driven story. I think that stood out to me more this time than it did in the past. So, but I agree with you. Like that first movie, I like that it's like more of a horror film than a sci-fi film. And you know, like you said, the simplicity of it, the like efficiency of it, it's very like economical as far as being like a low budget sci-fi film and just kind of, you know, like not really complicating itself more than it needs to. So yeah, I really enjoyed both those films a lot.
All right, well, let's talk about Terminator Dark Fate. As I kind of alluded with the story of it already, what'd you think of this one, Will? Do you think where do you think it lands for you compared to the other ones?
I don't know. I mean, that's the thing. I saw it today, and I was hoping, because initially I thought we were going to be recording right after, and I was like, this is going to be even more tough because I have to figure out where I stand on this thing. And then I found out we had a couple hours, and I was like, okay, I'll have to think about it for a bit. And I still am not 100% sure where I land on, so I'll have to talk it out. But I think I'm somewhere between like maybe a little below T3, but like above Salvation and Genesis. But I still don't know if it's really a good film or even like a decent one. I like the ideas at play here, I think, without giving too much away. And I will say, I mean, we were talking about twists. I admire the film doesn't give away the opening scene, which I think is effective as far as it's just kind of coming out of the gate and just changing things up in a particularly interesting way that I don't think was tied particularly well to the rest of the film, besides a few scenes here and there. But yeah, I think the Terminator franchise, by design, it's like always inevitable there's going to be a reboot or another sequel, because by nature of time travel, like they have the excuse of like going back and doing it again, or having another Terminator come through time to stop John Connor or Sarah Connor. And it's not like the formula is particularly fresh at this point, but there is always an avenue for which they can, exploit that and do something different. And I think it's neat that they got Jim Cameron back to do it again. I know you want me to say James Cameron, but I'll do what I want, John.
Jimmy, my buddy.
Yeah.
He's a producer.
James Cameron. Yeah. I mean, I don't know how involved he was. I know he wasn't on set at all because he was making Avatar 2 through 4 or 5. And I imagine he was just kind of like, it was more of him giving his blessing until probably post-production, when he probably kind of threw his weight around, as my guess, just based on how the film's kind of put together. But, I mean, I'll just say what I like. I like Linda Hamilton. I think it's great that she's back. And I do think that was probably the like key component that was missing in the other Terminator sequels, was just not having her in it and having her emotional core being there to provide just the strong protagonist that she provided in the first two films, or at least the first film especially. And her performance is great. I think she's having a lot of fun playing this part again, and I think some of the best scenes in the movie involve her, and I definitely admire what they did with the character, and I think it's an interesting departure from what they did in the previous two films. But at the same time, I also like that's key to what how your character evolved from T2. But yeah, I mean, I also really like Mackenzie Davis. I always think she's great, and I think she plays a good part here. But as far as the film itself, it just feels very kind of mandated, I guess. Like it's a film that it doesn't feel like it's particularly filmmaker driven as Jim Cameron's first two films were. Yeah, it's
fan service driven, you could say.
Yeah, I mean, we talk about like legacy sequels and how they often talk like they kind of, not pander is a strong word, but like they probably play more to the fans and feel like an extension of what the series should be. And this one kind of does both. Like it tries to have some ideas from James Cameron and tries to take the series in a different direction, but it's also so tied to what came before that's kind of in this weird standstill for me, where it's like trying to evolve the series while also like respecting it and fawning over its legacy. And over the course of the film, I was generally engaged with it for like the first 2/3, I'd say. But by the end, like I just realized like I had no real strong emotional connection to the film or the characters, and it just felt like one action scene over another that was done fairly competently, but without real distinction from a filmmaker, as James Cameron usually brings. And it's fine, I guess. Like it's an okay film, but it did remind me a lot of when we saw Halloween last year, and that sequel in particular felt like it had a lot of promise, and it was fine. Like it was delivered okay, and it was competent enough that it wasn't really worth criticizing too deeply. But once it was all said and done, it just felt like a bit of a missed opportunity. Like it felt a bit surface as far as what it was doing, and how it presented itself felt like it didn't have as much to add as it could have. And ultimately, that's where I'm sort of at with this one, where it's like, it's fine for what it is, but considering how much weight they're trying to throw around with James Cameron being involved and Linda Hamilton being back, and obviously Arnold Schwarzenegger being back, it still feels impartial as the other three attempts to make Terminator 3 have been for me.
All right. I see, I'm surprised. I actually think this is a movie to watch with low expectations, but I think this is much better than last year's Halloween. I thought that film was just kind of a slog to get through, whereas this one, even though you might find some things worth criticizing in the aftermath, I just found myself liking the movie the whole way through. As I was watching it, I liked what the characters were doing. I liked the ideas. I felt like I was in this movie and I was in the chase with them. And I just had a blast seeing Mackenzie Davis's character just be this new kind of human protector who her powers were a little bit more unpredictable. There was kind of a thrilling aspect to the way these characters team up. I do think you would be hard pressed to call a movie like this great, because it does sort of have like that Force Awakens syndrome of feeling like everything has to tie back to the first two films. Everything has to be fan service, and that can hold it back a good deal, but at least it's entertaining. And I think that it's the kind of movie where you go in with low expectations, you have a really good time watching, and I think most people watching will have a good time. And you forget about most of it, and it doesn't leave an impression afterward. But you still saw it, and you still maybe we'll see like the next Terminator film. And I just don't think I can't see myself finding this one to be worse than Terminator 3. I just think that film just didn't have any spirit to it, or it barely says anything, and it's like we were saying before, it's so straightforward. Where at least this film, it has attempts at humor, it has action scenes that are far more coherent, far more interesting, at least to me.
I mean, the third T3 did definitely have humor in it. It's not like
yeah, it did have a little bit, but
talk to the hand, of course, yeah.
I don't know. Some of the humor in T3, even for me as like a 12-year-old, I thought felt a little bit forced. Here, well, that's why there's definitely forced humor. There's some of it. There's some of it, but I think that for every joke that doesn't work, there's like maybe two more that do. And I think a lot of it comes in Arnold Schwarzenegger. And I know people are going to disagree on this, but I just think that what they decided to do with him here, there is a sort of like a throwing of our hands up and being like, this is what we're going to do. We're going to do this version of Schwarzenegger. And it's a bit off the rails, but I like that. I like that we're getting back to a more classic version of Arnold.
Oh, yeah. No, I agree. I think, yeah, we're more in line than I think you might be anticipating. I definitely agree with that. I as I was saying earlier, I definitely think Grace is a great character. I felt like, she brought that humanity that was interesting while also being a Terminator, obviously. It was a nice balance, I think, was a great idea. I could see Jim Cameron being the person that probably, I don't know if he pitched that or not, but it's a nice direction to go with the franchise. But I agree with you that Arnold, I think, as far as the comedy is concerned, I mean, most of the other jokes didn't really work for me, but all the stuff with Arnold I really enjoyed. I mean, that's just maybe me being a sucker for Arnold Schwarzenegger, but I thought his take on Carl was definitely it brought some life that I think was at that point kind of lacking for me in the film, and I definitely think his involvement was an improvement.
I think the difference between this and Rise of the Machines, I guess, is that the humor in Rise of the Machines didn't add enough levity, whereas this film, it does. It feels like it serves that purpose, which is why I like it. It kind of fleshes out the downtime a little bit better. Still not on par with T2. I think the story and character work there is a bit stronger, but at least in this film, you can actually see something like, you can actually see some character work at play that is working, that is making these characters a bit more likable, with the exception, and this is the film's tragic flaw, of Danny, which I was so disappointed by. I thought that the actress is really good. She's clearly like putting effort into this role, but it's so strange because the script does give her agency. It gives her stuff to do. It gives her a backstory and a motivation, and there should be a really great character here. But it's one of those mysterious things where despite all of the best efforts from everyone involved, it doesn't work. And I can't tell you why it doesn't work, but it just doesn't.
I think I was thinking about this, and I think it's because the film is trying to have like 2 or 3 protagonists at the same time.
Right, where she gets lost in the shuffle.
Right.
Almost.
I mean, like by design, like if you were to like map the film out, like she would be the obvious protagonist. Like, because he's like the Sarah Connor of the film, and as far as like who Sarah Connor was in the first Terminator, and that would make sense. But it's like the film is also trying to make Sarah Connor the protagonist here, and Grace is like,
as they keep adding characters, they keep, it gets harder and harder. It almost starts as her movie, and then it becomes an ensemble almost against her will.
And that's what I think happened, because it's like by the end, like I think that's where it kind of falls apart, is at the end of the film, doesn't really know what to do, because it's like we set up 3 different protagonists here. I mean, maybe 2, and then like Grace is like half a protagonist. And it's just like, and then we're like, Arnold's also here. And then we have this new Terminator. And it just, I don't know. It's not like again, it's not a messy film, but I don't think it quite comes together as cohesively as possible. And I think that's why the emotion of the ending moments just didn't really hit for me, because it just didn't feel like they set it up particularly well. And then when they tried to do that with Danielle's character, that scene for me just completely fell flat.
It doesn't work at all. It's really, really unfortunate. And I don't know if we even addressed this, but this is Tim Miller who directed this. And the Deadpool movies, you can see a lot of Deadpool DNA in this for the most part. Yeah, it's not, it's not all over this movie.
I mean, I'll say, like, I don't have anything against Tim Miller. I mean, I like the first Deadpool. I definitely think it doesn't hold up as well upon rewatch, but I think it's enjoyable for what it is.
Yeah.
But the thing that bugs me about Tim Miller being involved with this is that, like, this film is like, it's like the series returning to its R roots. And it's like, we're back, we're R-rated, we're mature. But it's like, all they really do is just, like, drop the F-bomb more, and there's, like, a little bit more blood. For the most part, this is just like it's just like a PG-13 blockbuster, just with like some stuff sprinkled in. But to me, it made it feel like more mature when they just kept throwing in F-bombs to like that in a way that felt forced as opposed to genuine to each scene.
Well, I don't want you to undersell how violent the movie is, because it is pretty visceral in certain places, and more so than a lot of PG-13 films.
I think it hides most of the violence, I'd say.
I wouldn't say most of it. I'd say half. I'd compromise on that, because there are some like pretty blatant. I mean, there aren't really bloody moments, but there's scenes where people are like crashing heads against walls, and that stuff can.
But there's only like one scene where there's like actual like blood. Like most of the violence is like Terminators fighting Terminators, which is pretty PG-13 stuff when they're both robots. I don't know.
I'll concede that I think that there are so many scenes involving Linda Hamilton where she is way more indestructible than I think what real life would dictate, but that's a different discussion. I was also going to say this is co-produced by David Ellison, who is the founder of Skydance. And so so you kind of alluded to this before, don't want to forget about this, but he was a producer on Terminator Genesis, and they were going to do a trilogy of films with Terminator Genesis. That's why they reset the timelines and did all that weird stuff. And the film did well enough at the box office that initially they were going to keep going with the films, but then they canceled it because like the film just wasn't, it did okay. It did well. I shouldn't say just okay. It did well, but then they were seeing that like interest in sequels was really low based on their research. And so they were like, we're not going to do any sequels. We're going to try this again. And that's when James Cameron got involved. So Ellison himself went to James Cameron. And the thing that convinced Cameron to get involved was that this whole idea of like getting rid of the sequels and just doing a direct sequel to Judgment Day. That's what got him on board. Yeah. So, and then just to say, Cameron did work on this film a little bit. He was involved in pre-production. I think he did a little bit of like casting decisions, and he worked on the script a little bit. But we don't know to what extent. It could be a lot, could be a little.
I mean, he does have a story credit. I mean, it is like his name's involved, like you said, as a producer and a story writer.
But that could be as simple as he said that Schwarzenegger had to be in it. So that could be like part of like, he probably gave a suggestion of how they could work Schwarzenegger into the story.
Right. It's, but I don't know. I never really got the sense that it's like Tim Miller's movie in the way that the first two films are James Cameron's films.
I would agree with that.
While still being like, like the second one's, especially it's like $100 million film. It's a big film, but this one, there's nothing in it that like it that feels individual to any particular one person. It just feels like a bunch of studio execs and a bunch of producers and one director just kind of all conglomerating and like, well, we have to do this. And it's like, we can do an action scene like this. And then what are some set pieces we can do? And it just, I think to my earlier point, it's not so much the film is particularly bad or it's, I think it's overall like, it's like decent. It's okay. But I think I'm just getting tired of like these like kind of so studio movies that like are perfectly acceptable, but at the same time, totally indistinct and don't really feel like they offer that much other than like, oh, okay, well, that was better than the last one, or that was better than the past two sequels. And it's just like, if this came out at the same time when Genesis came out, I'd be probably more agreeable with that. But it just, I don't know. I just feel like, like I feel like we're kind of like setting the bar pretty low right now for studio movies to the point where it's like, by just being generally competent, that's acceptable enough. And I'm just worrying that, you know, I mean, just like I kind of want, you know, like if we're gonna get everyone back together, the gang back together for something, I just want something that's more than just sort of all right. I guess in the scheme of things,
we all want movies to be better. That's
right.
something we can all agree on. But you know, this is nothing new. There's nothing new that a film is
Sure.
going to just be okay instead of better. And I'm trying to appreciate what is good about it because I'm just
sure.
like,
And there's a lot in there.
There
There's a lot
really
to
is.
appreciate.
We didn't say a lot of the positives specifically, but I just want to bring up Gabriel Luna here as the Terminator itself. I forget what it was called in this film, the Rev something. But
Rev something.
I really liked him in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. He was Ghost Rider. And
I heard that.
I think he does a really good job as this like really menacing Terminator who can like pretend to be human on a dime. And I didn't love the power set as much. Like I think it's a little bit too T-1000 and they weren't as creative with it as they could have been. I was waiting for something else to be added into the mix. The whole thing where he can kind of like clone himself, they use it enough, but it doesn't, I don't know, it just doesn't match that like wonder and awe you get from the first two Terminator films and being like, oh my word, these Terminators are really scary things. Yeah. But I think what carries us through is Mackenzie Davis. I just think that she's like the beating heart of the film. And the fact that she can go toe to toe with actors as like charismatic and as engaging as Linda Hamilton and Arnold Schwarzenegger just shows that like we have a really great actress on our hands who's still early in her career. I know we both really loved her performance in Tully. And I didn't see her Black Mirror episode, but I've heard good things about that. But I'm a little bit more torn on Natalia Reyes, where I can't say anything, or Reyes. I can't say anything about her performance specifically, but there's something, a combination of factors. But I am appreciative of this film's like, it actually does have like Latinx culture in it, and it's more matter of fact. I think it does mess around with some cultural commentary involving like the Mexican border, but it does it in with a more deft hand than something like Sicario, for example. And based on what I've heard, like that new Rambo film, but I definitely like that representation always makes me happy to see. It was really cool just being in a theater with other Latinx people and like we're watching a movie where there's characters just speaking Spanish and there's no big to do about it. And that's always kind of cool to see because this film is at least, it has fresh ingredients to it. The fresh ingredients range from some of that representation, but then also just having like three women at the forefront here, kind of like powering through the narrative. And it's not that same Avengers Endgame moment where you feel pandered to. It's more sort of just like Sarah Connor has always been this amazing and badass heroine. Here are two other ones to go with her, and together they're just this really cool trio, and that's all we have to say about it.
Yeah, and I generally, I agree with that. I think most of what you're saying is what I appreciate about the film as well. And I definitely will say that, to your point earlier, this is a little more of a political film than I was initially anticipating. Because, like you said, like there's, a clear, allegory to like the border and, like what it's kind of hard not to separate that from what's going on now. And I don't think the movie wants you to separate that. And it's interesting to tie that back to how much of the first two movies refer to like the Holocaust and their different allegories. And so I think, that stuff works. I like that set piece. I think that's an intriguing scene. Like the components here I just think when they're all together, there's something about the film that it just feels lacking for some reason I still can't put my finger on. And ultimately it's like, I think I like enough what's here that I enjoyed it fine, but I just wish there was like that extra boost where it was like, oh, in addition to having all these good components, it was just a good film. And to me, it's like it has a lot of good components and ultimately results in kind of a mixed bag film.
I'm the other way around. I recommend it. Yeah, go ahead.
No, I mean, I was also going to just echo what you said. I think, while I think probably Linda Hamilton gives like the performance of the film, I do agree with you that Mackenzie Davis is a fantastic actress. And I think she did a great job here. And I can't wait to see what she does next. It
really is good casting on her part. And one last thing I'll say is that there is kind of a weird thing with the Schwarzenegger character. I don't want to give it away, but if you know anything about his personal life and an incident that happened with him with his maid, and it's almost like the movie's like commenting on that directly, which I was surprised by.
I didn't think about that.
It's all I could think about. So when you watch the film, you may pick up on that as well. It is kind of something that kind of took me out of the movie for a minute there. But regardless, wow. So
Is that the kid's name? Was it Mateo?
Yeah, it was Mateo.
Yeah.
In the movie.
Right. Yeah. No, in the movie. Yeah, that's what I meant.
Yeah. All that said, I yes, like I said before, I recommend it. I think that it amounts to a movie that if you like the Terminator films, if you saw this trailer and you were curious and you're in the mood to see kind of a blockbuster with interesting characters that you're going to have a good time watching, it may not become one of your favorite films of the year, one of your favorite blockbusters in recent memory, but I do think it'll put a smile on your face a few times. And I think some of these action set pieces are really going to be just a wonder to see for a lot of people, especially that first car chase scene. I think it's a direct echo of Terminator 2, but in a way that I think is respectful of the franchise and not that's one of the few things that didn't feel like fan service to me. It actually felt like an appreciation for what came before and a building upon of what came before. I can't say that that's the case for the rest of the film, unfortunately, but there's enough here that I think people are going to be satisfied. So I give it a B-. What about you, Will?
Yeah, I mean, you know, it's for as much as I've been kind of negative and poo-pooing certain things about the film,
B+.
I think I'm mostly yeah, what if I was just like a film?
Yeah.
Great time at the movies. You know, so for as much as I've been kind of critical of the film, you know, maybe I don't know. I guess maybe I'm just being kind of cynical and jaded about the state of cinema movie or studio movies in general. But yeah, I mean, as far as this film is concerned, a lot of what you said is what I feel about the film. I like it for what it's doing, and I like the core components. I think altogether it results in a decent enough film. I just kind of wish that I had more appreciation for it, and I had a little more to value other than what I think is ultimately a generally decent but not particularly strong studio Terminator film. And I think I felt the absence of what it could have done, or it felt its absences towards the end, especially. But yeah, it's okay. It's fine. I enjoyed it. I'd probably give it B- as well. My only thing I didn't bring up was that I really found a lot of the CG to be like super rubbery and like very distracting.
I'd say, yeah. In certain cases with Gabriel Luna's Terminator, for sure.
Yeah. And I'll say Gabriel Luna, I think he did a good job in the part, but I also never really felt the menace I felt like with, say, Robert Patrick in T2. And I think that was something that I found kind of lacking about his Terminator, but overall I thought he did a decent job. Yeah, I'm fine with it. It's okay. But at the same time, I don't think it quite compares to T1 or T2 as much as it would desperately hope to be on par with those films.
I guess you could say the best character was Carl's Jr. All right, that'll do it for our review of Terminator Dark Fate.
Don't you disrespect Mateo like that.
Literally only the West Coast will understand that joke. But yeah, that's Terminator Dark Fate. We both give it a B-. I'm surprised. I thought you were going to be more of a C+ on it. But you explained your case.
Yeah, I mean, I'm between a B-, C+. I enjoyed it. Like, I didn't feel like it was time or money wasted, but I just kind of wish that, like, in the scheme of things, I just feel like I'd rather have more studio films that weren't just decent enough. I'd rather have like a like all around good film, but it's fine. It's enjoyable.
All right. Well, looking at its box office performance so far, that's kind of a mixed bag for sure.
Yeah, it's not doing too well, right?
Well, it's complicated. I think
it costs like 185 million, right?
Yeah. So looking at its budget was between 185 and 196 million. It's tough because this is it's over 2 hours, so it has that limitation. That's going to be a bar to entry for some people, and that's also going to prevent more show times. But so far, it's made 123.6 million, and that's worldwide. So only about 30 million domestically, 94 million internationally. This film will probably be saved by its international numbers, because it's not quite doing as well everywhere else.
I was going to say, I heard it wasn't doing too well internationally because it came out like a week earlier in different markets, I heard, and it wasn't doing as hot.
I'm just saying that it'll probably do okay because its international numbers will carry it through. But yeah, if you're looking relative to other films of this like budget, yeah, it needs way more than it's getting right now, especially because international numbers is like, it can be pennies on the dollar for the studio. So you kind of have to factor that in. It's not like 123 million is a direct comparison to its budget, unfortunately for them. So Yeah, and that's pretty bad. Like a 30 million domestic opening is pretty bad for a release that's in over 4,000 theaters.
Yeah,
so
that's not great.
That's not great, and it doesn't have a lot of excuses because it didn't have a ton of competition. I mean, Harriet is doing pretty well. That made $12 million in its opening weekend. We'll talk about that pretty soon, and that's a $17 million budget. So if you look at it that way, Terminator Dark Fate only made about double the box office of Harriet, which cost 17 million compared to almost 200 million. So that's kind of where people are looking at this and being like, that's a pretty bad showing. And we can't count it out completely yet, but yeah, if you look at like the history of Terminator films, this is a clear sign that Terminator fatigue is upon us and then some.
Well, that's the thing, is that like we talk about legacy sequels and stuff, and I think it was like Force Awakens and Halloween specifically were benefit because the past entries were like, you know, decades before it, and you know, like at least one day, right? Traditionals. Yeah.
It had been 10 years since Revenge of the Sith, but then this film was really like harkening back. I think they thought that the calculation would be, it's because people will feel like it's been a long time since Terminator 2. So that's the anticipation. But they probably, I don't think the marketing made that as clear as they would have needed it to. I think like the only indication is like Linda Hamilton is back, but yeah, because Arnold Schwarzenegger's been in like almost all of these films, it doesn't really feel like they've been gone.
Yeah, that's what I mean. So it's like,
yeah,
you know, it just doesn't feel like there was like that absence. Like I bring up people like, oh, there's another Terminator movie. It's not like, oh, Terminator's back. It's just like, oh, there's another one. It's like, wasn't there one like 4 years ago? It's like, yeah, it sucked. It's like, oh yeah, that's right. Okay. So.
Right. And in this, I remember because the first indication that this was not going to do so well was Thursday night, because its Thursday night previews were only about the same as Genesis. And that's not adjusting for inflation, because Genesis came out 4 years ago. So yeah. And then Genesis came out on a Tuesday, right? So, cause that was I think July 4th weekend.
And this was weird because it came out like on Halloween, and it was like, people aren't going to the...
It's such a weird time to release this movie. Yeah. I don't understand. Maybe they thought that this would have more of, maybe they were really just trying to get into like what made Halloween successful, the movie. And I just don't think that that's like translatable, as easily translatable, especially because this is November. This isn't, you know, we're already in the thick of November, and Halloween weekend isn't a time to go watch a lot of movies. People are going to Halloween parties. People are wanting to watch horror movies right now. Right. So it is a baffling release date. So I don't fully understand it myself.
I mean, I feel like probably would have been wiser just to push it to November 8th.
Yeah.
Because Paramount had that. Well, actually, now I think about that, I guess they didn't want to compete with Dr. Sleep, but they had that
I would
opening.
Switch it.
Well, they had that opening for Sonic, and then Sonic got pushed to Valentine's Day, and they put Playing with Fire there instead. But it feels like November 8th would be a better time for Terminator, because it would be like after Halloween, but it's like in the fall, and it's just like, I don't know. It just seems like there was a better option there, but
there was. I think honestly we could speculate all day about the misfortunes of the box office misfortunes, we should say, of these films. But for now, let's get into our next film of the week, and that is Marriage Story, which I saw. Will, hopefully you're going to be able to catch this one either this week or next week. I can't wait to talk about it with you.
Yeah, I have no idea when it's coming out around here, but I hope to see it soon.
Well, it hits limited release on November 6th, so hopefully it's going to be in some cities around North America. We're not quite sure how many theaters it's going to be opening in quite yet. We'll probably have more info on that later. But for now, I did manage to see this one. I attended a Q&A with Noah Baumbach, and that was really fun because it was moderated by Brad Bird, which I thought was a very surprising... Like, as soon as it was a surprise too, they're like, Noah Baumbach is going to be there, and there might be someone else. And we were all kind of like, oh, I wonder who is it going to be Greta Gerwig, or, you know, is it going to be somebody Stiller. Could it be Adam Sandler? And no,
I said Ben Stiller.
I know, but I'm just kind of adding to that. No, it was Brad Bird, which I thought was a very, very interesting. I kind of was reading into it as well. I was like, I wonder if this means Brad Bird's going to do his next film on Netflix or something like that. I'm just throwing out wild theories without evidence. That's all.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, do you think it didn't? He hasn't worked with Randy Newman, right? I know Randy Newman's worked with Pixar, but
he had. Randy Newman has worked with Pixar, but not the Incredibles films. That's Michael Giacchino.
Yeah, that's what I mean. That's what I thought. Yeah. So it's like I don't know how. Yeah, Brad Bird connects. Other than, is he a resident in San Francisco?
He is. Well, he lives around here, but I
Okay.
think he also lives in LA. So he is a good
Yeah.
choice because, of course, Emeryville is just across the bridge. So, and that is, of course, where Pixar is. But regardless, it was
Maybe
cool
he's
to
having
have
a
him
divorce
there.
or something.
Oh my gosh.
No, I hope not.
I was going to
No.
try to get around saying that, but thank you. No. Brad Bird's personal life is his business, as always.
Right.
But
Yes.
Noah Baumbach's business is our business because he literally makes films about it. And that is probably the best transition we can get into his newest film.
I was gonna say if unfortunately if Brad Bird's going through a divorce right now, that's gonna make Incredibles 3 very interesting.
I saw it. I was like, no, please don't. Will, no,
I
don't
apologize.
do it.
Can you imagine Marriage Story with the Incredibles?
I hate you so much.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh my word. Yes, I can imagine it. And you know what? Good for Helen. She's been putting up with it. This
Yeah.
Bob guy for too long.
Yeah.
But all right. Marriage Story is the newest film, as I said, from Noah Baumbach, who's a director of some films I truly love, including Frances Ha, While We're Young. His most recent film, I believe it's most recent film, Meyerowitz Stories, which I like that one a good deal. And it's also a Netflix film. But Frances Ha, I mean, that is just, it's in my top 30 films of the decade list. It is probably my favorite Greta Gerwig performance. And because of that film, every time I'm about to watch a new film from Noah Baumbach, I'm always excited. I always feel like I'm in for something, a treat. Even Mistress America, I liked. And that was definitely a far less stronger effort than I think. But that was a while back. That was a few years ago.
Yeah. I was gonna say the only one recently of his I didn't really care for was While We're Young, but the rest I thought have been pretty strong.
While We're Young was one of my favorite films of 2015. I couldn't disagree.
Oh, really?
more. Oh, yes. I love that film.
Oh, right.
Yeah, that was before our time. That was
Yeah.
before you and I started duking it out.
I didn't.
Maybe I could have
I didn't
convinced
dislike
you.
It was okay, I guess. Yeah, I wasn't as wild about it, but yeah, I'm glad you got something out of it.
I really did. I really did. That film affected me. But here's his newest one, Marriage Story, also a Netflix film that is going to be, I think, hitting streaming on Netflix either the end of November or early December. I don't have the exact date.
Probably, well, I think it's December, right? Because they're going to keep November Thanksgiving for
Irishman.
Martin Scorsese and The Irishman, yeah.
Right. That's probably true. Yeah, I definitely don't have that right in front of me, so I can't say for sure.
I want to say December 7th is when it's coming to Netflix.
That would be a good time for it. You know, it's the holidays and that's the time. That's the time to start watching movies about divorce. But that said, it did premiere at the Venice International Film Festival. It got just rapturous praise. Some critics and friends of the show, we definitely really respect loving this. I haven't seen, I don't think, a single negative review of Marriage Story yet. And I'm sure they're out there. I just haven't come across them. Marriage Story stars Adam Driver and Scarlett Johansson as Charlie and Nicole, respectively. They are a married couple, and we actually start off in the film with almost like a montage introduction of these characters through a voiceover narration, and it's each one of them describing the other person, which I consider it's a very quirky kind of signature Baumbach filmmaking move. And yes, the characters in the film live in New York City, as most of his characters do. But we almost have kind of like a honeymoon phase with these characters because he shows us how likable and breathable they are, but then it's swiftly upended when it's revealed to us that Charlie and Nicole are separating and they're perhaps maybe even getting a divorce. And the details and the reasons for why this is happening are only slowly, methodically revealed over the course of the film. I think it's fair to say that Marriage Story begins in media res, in the middle of things, and it actually takes its time parsing out all the information you need to know versus the information that you should know right now. And then it layers that with information you may not have expected to see. And I think what's brilliant about the relationship itself is that the first time you see it, it looks superficially idealistic. You think like this is a functioning, happy relationship, but then the movie takes its time to completely dismantle that notion and to show you the flaws of what drives people apart and what brings them away from each other, even two people who they seem to love each other. And in this case, this is a relationship where their profession comes into play. This is This is a story where the main guy is a theater company director, and his wife is a very talented actress who works in his company. But the true fulcrum of the conflict between them is in the form of their son, Henry, who's played here by the wonderful, lovable kid, Azzy Robertson. He was in last year's Juliet Naked, which I didn't see, but I think you saw, right?
Well, it was good. Yeah, I liked that.
That's a kid from that film. And like I said before, the conflict here is that Nicole is from Los Angeles. That's where her family is from. And she's determined to stay there with Henry against the wishes of Charlie, who considers New York to be their true home. He doesn't want to leave it. Did I tell you that Noah Baumbach writes films about his personal life? Anyway, it gets even more complicated as Nicole hires a firebrand divorce attorney played by Laura Dern, who has a very chilling, almost benign, but benign in a chilling way demeanor. And it's masking this ruthless surrogate fighting spirit that she wields for Nicole's sake. And Charlie soon has to find legal representation of his own in order to make sense of all these dramatic changes, sort of barreling at him. He's getting completely overwhelmed by this situation, and he just did not see this coming. And it's through this that I have to say Marriage Story is not for the faint of the empathetic heart. It will wrench anyone who loves cinema for how it can emotionally involve the viewer. And Baumbach even he playfully teases this early on when he suggests that Charlie cries easily in movies. And it's kind of like Baumbach saying that directly to the audience, like, okay, if you're like this guy, this is kind of what you're in for. But I don't want to make it sound like this film is a weep fest. It really isn't for the most part. It's really more of a drama that's going to get your blood boiling. It's going to get people feeling righteous indignation for what's happening to these characters. But the real beauty of the film is in how it ping-pongs you between both the lead actors who are vying for Henry's future. And at no point is one character wholly sympathetic, save for the child, which to me resembles reality. And in that way, it raises the stakes for how this drama will play out. You're so convinced that this is a realistic spell that's been put upon you. You can't happy ending your way out of it while you're watching the film. You just get sucked into the moment-to-moment drama and what they're experiencing, what they're feeling in all of these moments. And I just have to take a second here to say that Adam Driver and Scarlett Johansson, I mean, this is them at their best. Especially Scarlett Johansson, who I think hasn't been at her best in a little while. I don't want to say anything negative about her performance in Avengers Endgame, but we can all probably agree that's not really the Scarlett Johansson as like the actress who we really know can bring it. That's not the Scarlett Johansson of films like where only her voice in her can just completely make an audience fall in love with her.
I was going to say, is it her best since Under the Skin?
Well, I don't like Under the Skin, so
no, that's your problem, not mine.
There you go. But and then even Adam Driver, who I think has been at his, I think we're seeing Adam Driver probably in his prime. I would be thrilled. Like I'd be thrilled if this. Yeah, honestly, if this isn't even him at his peak, that would be fantastic news because I mean, we're talking about someone who's rapidly becoming one of the best actors in the business today, if not one of like the top 5, top 10. And this film just further proves that case.
I was going to say, because I was thinking about Dustin Hoffman. In some ways, this could be like his Kramer versus Kramer, I guess. Almost, especially because yes, this film does take a lot of spiritual notes from that. And I would say in some ways, this film is a bit better for our time than Kramer versus Kramer would be, honestly, because that sympathy that I was talking about, where you really just don't, it doesn't egregiously villainize anyone, and at the same time, it shows them at their worst. So I think that's such a tricky line to balance in a script, and just Baumbach, he just nails it. But even though I kind of made it sound like this is a movie that'll make you sad and mad, there are still laughs here. It's a Baumbach movie, of course. There's going to be humor. It's layered all throughout this movie. There's a set piece in this movie involving a very bureaucratic woman that is one of my favorite scenes of 2019. It is just absolutely delightfully cringeworthy. I think that the entire audience was just uproarious about this, but in a quiet way, if that makes any sense. It's not like one of those scenes where you're just laughing out loud. It's one of those scenes where you are just like holding your breath, trying not to laugh because you don't think you should. It's fantastic. And I definitely don't want to give away the details for that. And I have to bring up, of course, that the film is called Marriage Story.
And it's almost kind of humorous in a meta way that the score is by Randy Newman, who did the score for the Toy Story films. And when you watch this, it's not a stretch to say that like the emotional undercurrent of Marriage Story is really similar to Toy Story 3. Like it's weird and it won't make sense until you watch it, but I think the score has a lot to do with it. And honestly, I forgot Randy Newman did the score, but I didn't forget while I was watching it because you will absolutely get Toy Story 3 vibes here. And it's very strange and bizarre, but overall, I like that. It wasn't a hindrance for me. It didn't get in the way of me enjoying the film. And I did. I really enjoyed Marriage Story.
Did he sing the lyric, like sing the score at all, or is it just?
I wish.
I'm just asking. Okay, it's just him performing the music?
Oh, I was about to do a Randy Newman impression, but I don't think I could pull it off.
You're no Will Sasso, but yeah, I didn't know. I was curious if that was because I mean I've only seen him do a score for Pixar movies. So I didn't know what it was like.
Yeah. And it is its own thing, and I think you kind of have to just experience it for yourself. And I'll be honest though, I was just absolutely mentally exhausted by this film. By the time you get to the ending, I mean, it puts you through so much, and it's not until the final third of the film that it all starts to feel worth it. Up until that point, I really felt like Baumbach was. He was just making us depressed for no reason, and it felt kind of cynical in a way. But, I should have known that the thing with Baumbach is that like all roads of his films lead to something special, even the ones that people don't particularly care for as much. And in this film, it's so hard not to separate, like in this case, how his autobiographical elements are really there if you're looking for them. Clearly, Baumbach has both of his former marriage with Jennifer Jason Leigh, his current relationship with Greta Gerwig. Both of those relationships are in mind for this film, and he examines what it's truly like for two artists, namely a director and an actor, to have this like power imbalance and how they can hopefully come to reasonable terms and sort out their issues. But it's not easy. And it's not graceful, and there's a lot of false politeness to it, and there's a lot of fighting through other people to it that is just so relatable, I think, for a lot of people who are going to be watching this, even though the whole idea of like a director and an actress itself is virtually unknown to the vast majority of viewers. Like, people don't know what it's like to be married to somebody who's an actress in a theater company they own and direct for. Like, that's so different for a lot of people. But Baumbach does what you're supposed to do in films, and that's he finds the universal truth behind what can ruin a connection between artists the same way it can in any profession that involves pride, ego, complacency, all of those things that are probably in every profession there is. So, except I guess the Catholic Church, who knows? But actually, no, I take that back. So, yeah, Marriage Story, it's one of the most human films of the year. It's unlike some of Baumbach's most recent films. In the sense that it's so human. I think Meyerowitz Stories is a really good film, but it doesn't have what I think made Francis Ha so special. And I think this is his best film since that one, which for me is super high bar. I think While We're Young is, like I said before, is something I really, really like. This one just narrowly is over that. And I've had some time to process it, and I wasn't sure about this when I first saw the film. I kind of walked out of it feeling I don't know yet. I don't know how I truly feel, because I did feel like I went through something. But after I've processed the film, I give it an enthusiastic A-. I think it's going to last the test of time beyond the first few viewings for people, especially me. And it just cements what I already know, which is that Baumbach is just one of our best directors, and he's at the top of his game right now. And I'm really glad to see it. I was worried that we were going to maybe see a decline because I didn't think Meyerowitz Stories was quite up to snuff for him. But I think that that's not the case. He's still making great stuff, and I'll be curious to see what you think, Will, because I think we engage with movies a little bit differently, and I'm not sure how it's going to come over to you. I'm worried this film might not click with you. It might not make you feel what I felt, and I don't know how that's going to be. Maybe that'll mean you like it more, maybe it'll mean you like it less, but I think it is going to have a different impact on lots of different types of people.
I don't know what exactly you're saying there, but I'll...
You're heartless.
Yeah. I was
not what I'm saying at all, of course.
No. But no, I'm really excited for this one. I love just character driven movies like this that, just like they're very personal. They're very honest to what the filmmaker's emotions were, but at the same time, it seems like Noah Baumbach is allowing himself to recognize his own faults, like not, like just championing him, be like, oh, I was in the right or anything. Just trying to have an honest, like, dissection of what his life was like, and
Right.
being, using therapy in film, which is always something I find very intriguing. Same with Honey Boy coming up in a couple weeks.
That's right.
Next week. But yeah, no, it looks like this is like, we mentioned Kramer versus Kramer, Husbands and Wives, and then his own film, Squid and the Whale. It looks like a combination of the three, and that's very intriguing to me, and I can't wait to check it out.
It's similar to Squid and the Whale, but it's definitely better, I think. And you can tell like how much he's learned since that early film in his career. But yeah, I hope you like it as much as I did. And I think at the very least, this cast is going to really win over a lot of hearts. I mean, I mentioned Laura Dern, who might get a Best Supporting Actress nomination. I wouldn't be surprised. But also Alan Alda and Ray Liotta. Oh, it's fantastic. Julie Haggerty and Merritt Weaver, who she's been popping up a lot more in films lately. The last one I saw her in was Charlie Says. And I mean, she is just surprising me over and over again. And then, of course, got to shout out Wallace Shawn, who has kind of a minor role in this. Ooh, great to see him pop up. He gets
Alan Alda.
Oh yeah. And
Randy Newman.
And Wallace Shawn gets some of the best one-liners I've seen at the movies in a while. Oh my word, he has one liner in particular that will never escape my brain. And also there is I kind of mentioned this earlier, but Martha Kelly, keep your eye out for her. She has a role in this that is
from Baskets.
Yes, and she's a stand-up comedian. I think people might know her from that as well. She has a minor role in this, but it is probably one of the most memorable ones, and I was so happy to see that she's getting some bigger roles, and I love to see it. She's a great actress, so and a great comedian.
I thought she was hilarious on Baskets, so I'm excited to see her career expanding. It's very exciting to see.
Yeah. All right, that's Marriage Story. Definitely hope a lot of people like it as much as I do when it hits Netflix, and definitely keep an eye out if you can see it on the big screen. I think it'll be great to watch it with an audience for sure. It's kind of long, so I'm not surprised that Netflix was, quick to let this be as long as it is. It's 136 minutes. That's probably why I said before, like, I really felt, tired by the very end, but yeah.
If Sandy Wexler can be 145 minutes, then I think Marriage Story can be 136.
I guess that is the case. All right, Will, tell us all about Harriet, the new biopic about Harriet Tubman. We have a written review of this film on cinemahawks.com, written by our very own Emily Cuban-Kinnick, and it's a fantastic review. Definitely should go read it. But we're going to get Will's take here. I haven't seen the film yet. I'm looking forward to checking it out and seeing it for myself. But what is this about, and should we be watching it?
Yeah, I mean, like you said, it's a biopic of Harriet Tubman, specifically her early years. And it's directed by Casey Lemons, who is a filmmaker. I don't know if some people will. Her films are smaller in terms of they're not quite as mentioned as much as they should be. But I think she has certainly proven herself. I think Eve's Bayou is probably the one that is most acclaimed and probably well known.
I think it's Eve's Bayou.
Sorry, Bayou. Say Eve's Bayou, and then
Talk to Me,
which is a film I really enjoy with Don Cheadle from 2007, and then she also did The Caveman's Valentine. I feel like this is the first thing she's done in a while. Like I can't remember the last thing I've seen from her besides Talk to Me. But if I'm forgetting one, please let me know. But
you're right. It has been a while, and I think her last one was Black Nativity, but that was probably 6 or 7 years ago.
Oh yeah, the one with Queen Latifah and Dolly Parton.
It's based on the Langston Hughes play. I think it's also called. It's Forrest Whitaker, Angela Bassett. It's a big cast.
Oh wait, sorry, I'm thinking of a different one. But no, I did see that one. That one. I don't think that one was quite good, but I don't remember it too well, so don't quote me on that. But I mean, like you said, I mean, there's not. It's a story of Harriet Tubman. It's I think what you expect it to be. It's very much your traditional Hollywood biopic of a very important and empowered figure, and I think it's a film that I want to champion it so much because it's obviously a very important story. It's a film that I want it to be like shown in classes and to be a very impacting awards contender as it very much wants to be. But the film itself, unfortunately, in my view, is just a ultimately pretty mediocre film about a very great person.
Can I add something to what you said about the classes thing? So I mentioned before we had a review from Emily on the site, but she also interviewed the screenwriter, Gregory Allen Howard. So that's also on the site right now. And I think one of the things, somebody who watched the film commented and actually said that, like, yeah, I'd love to see this film like in high school. It's like a great introduction, I think they said, to this real life person. And there is value to be held there, I think. And I think it depends on how truthful it is, which I'm not an expert on. But yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, nor am I. Yeah, and I'm not an expert there either. But I mean, like, my point being that there's so much potential for this film to be impactful and, you know, obviously be a great awards contender and also be a great showcase for the actress, Cynthia Erivo.
I think you pronounce it Cynthia Erivo. And
Erivo.
yeah, we talked about her.
Okay.
We talked about her. Oh, we didn't talk about
Bad
her.
Times.
Did we? When
Bad Times at El Royale.
we talked about her there. We talked about her with Widows. Yeah.
Yeah, she's a great actress. I think she's primarily known for Broadway work, if I'm not mistaken. She has an incredible voice and she sings a few songs in this film, which was very weird because it's like she's singing songs about her character while playing the character, if that makes sense. It was like, I couldn't place my fingers, like, who is this? It's like Beyonce. It's like, who's singing the songs? And it's just like, oh no, she's just singing her own, like, it's not her singing the songs. It's like a song is playing while her character. It just reminded me of like when they play like Jennifer Lopez songs during Hustlers. It's just like, yeah, it's a choice.
I do hope people check out some of her singing because she is just.
She's an amazing singer.
Her rendition of "Rise Up" is amazing that she did with Questlove, but then also her cover of "God Only Knows" that she did at the Grammys. Do you remember this? It was in like 2017, and she performed it with John Legend, and it is like one of my favorite versions of that song of all time. She is just tremendous.
Yeah, and I mean, an amazing talent, and she is very deserving of a great showcase like this. And she might genuinely get some awards attention for this because I think she does a great job, and I think, you know, it proves her dramatic talents in the right moments. But as a film, I saw it like 3 weeks ago, and I haven't thought about it much since, which is not a good thing because it's a type of film that should plant the seed for learning more about this great historical figure. And, you know, like you said, hopefully you can show in class and really get some great discussions out of it. But the film itself is very much a cookie cutter by the books, historical telling. It doesn't quite have enough creativity or enough ingenuity, I think, to really make itself stand out in any particular way. And, you know, it's a bummer because it's like, you know, you want this movie to be good. You want it to be something impactful and meaningful. And in the right moments, it does stand out. I mean, there's also some strong supporting performances from Leslie Odom Jr. and Janelle Monáe. But yeah, it's just very much a middle of the road biopic that could have been a lot more than it ultimately was. And that's a shame because it's, you know, you don't want a film like this to just be mediocre. You want it to stand out. You want it to be good or great. And ultimately that wasn't the case in my view. So I gave it a C+. It's, you know, not as bad as it could have been, I suppose. But at the same time, you know, you want something like this to be a lot better than it ultimately is.
Yeah, I won't be surprised if it premiered at TIFF. I won't be surprised if it gets some awards attention, maybe a nomination here and there in some cases. Do you think the music, do you think there's any music here that could be nominated?
Maybe. I mean, there are some like 1 or 2 or 3 original songs that could get some attention, but I don't know how tough the category is going to be. But because I imagine like Frozen 2 is going to have like some original songs and stuff like that. But yeah, I would say the most likely would be for Erivo for Best Actress, but we'll see because that's going to be a tough category this year.
Yeah, but supporting actress, do you think Janelle Monáe could qualify for that? Because there is a little bit of a gap of supporting actress, so there could definitely be some focus there. I really want to see this. I know that some critics are a little bit mixed on it. I know the general tone of Emily's review was she really appreciated it, but she had some pretty poignant criticisms, but it has 72% on Rotten Tomatoes, and that's out of 138 reviews. So there are critics who are liking it a lot. And then it also has a really good cinema score, A+, which I think that makes sense if you really consider like the audience coming out to this film are kind of poised to like it. So that makes me happy though, because I'm probably poised to like it. And maybe I'll have the same criticisms you're having, of course, but I definitely want to roll the dice and see if I enjoyed it a little bit more, because yeah, I admire so much, like, you know, I was reading the review with Gregory Allen Howard, and he's been trying for so long to make this movie. And I'm so glad it finally is out there, because it is so strange that Harriet Tubman's story is so mythic.
Yeah.
And like, it's just, this is a person, like, I feel like her story should be much more common knowledge, and film can be such a great avenue for that sort of thing.
Oh, for sure. And I definitely think if given a choice, even if I think this is a fairly mediocre film, I definitely think it's better to have it than to not. But at the same time, I just feel like there was so much potential here. And, you know, it is such a fascinating figure in American history that to me, it just feels like it was a bit of a missed opportunity, despite the strong talents of the acting, or the strong talents of the actors and crew involved, that it just ultimately resulted in a fairly middling film in my view. But I wouldn't discourage anyone from seeing it. I think if you feel you're going to get something out of this, I would definitely recommend you see it. I just didn't have as much of a experience as I think I was hoping to have with it, and that's a shame.
That is a shame, but this is a great segue, great transition into Will Ashton and myself announcing that we are in fact going to start teaching a history class in Glendale, Idaho. And so we're going to be showing this film and many more in our co-taught class. What grade are we going to be teaching again, Will?
What grade or what class?
What grade? It's history class. It's probably a mix of all of them, isn't it?
Yeah.
They're just going to like pile kids in from all over the school. And
10th grade?
The 10th? Okay.
I don't know. Seems like it's
the right time.
Yeah,
they're ready for it.
That's a good. Yeah.
So keep your eyes out.
I was going to bring up that there are no mentions, much to my surprise, of Harriet Tubman's relationship with the Autobots, as it was detailed so readily in that last Transformers movie. Quite an oversight that I was surprised by.
But once again, Michael Bay doesn't get any credit for the hard work he's done in educating the public. So
yeah,
auteur Michael Bay. All right. That's Harriet. We mentioned before it's doing pretty well at the box office. Made $12 million so far off of a $17 million budget reportedly, which is very good. And that means that it'll make its budget back. This is great news for Focus Features, because I know they've had some misses this year.
Oh, yes, they have.
I think that's probably fair to say.
Yeah. No, I'm glad it's doing well. Like I think it's a film that should be seen. I just wish that it was a little better, but I am glad it's doing well.
All right, that's Harriet. This next film I saw, and I think, well, it's funny because I think you were initially planning on seeing this, and I was going to miss it, and then I ended up seeing it, and you didn't.
Yeah.
But we have another Netflix movie, and that is The King. The King is from director David Michaud, whose previous work includes Animal Kingdom, The Rover, War Machine. I haven't seen any of those films. Have you?
Oh, yeah, I've seen Animal Kingdom and The Rover.
Okay.
I like them both a lot. I definitely like The Rover a lot. I think, I mean, they're both really good films.
Fascinating. I heard they were kind of middle of the road, but that's so strange. I don't know why.
I don't know. I mean, I really enjoyed The Rover. That was in my top 10 for 2014.
No kidding.
Animal Kingdom I like a lot. I didn't see the show that was inspired by it, but I definitely would recommend both of them. I mean, Animal Kingdom's the movie that propelled Jackie Weaver into the scene and made her as recognized as I think people might know her as today. But and also Joel Edgerton, who I believe helped write this film, if I'm not mistaken.
Well, so I'm about to get into it. It's actually co-produced by Joel Edgerton and Brad Pitt, many others. He did co-write it with David Michaud, and he stars in it as well. But the real star of the show here is Timothée Chalamet. He is the titular king and main character of this historical fiction, which is based off of several Shakespearean plays, including the Henriade. And the story itself loosely follows the exploits of Henry V when he was merely Prince Hal, a drunken, wildly worldly ne'er-do-well who had no intention of ever taking the throne from his father. I forget the time period this is all happening in, to be totally honest with you. I'm pretty rusty on my Shakespearean dramas.
2016, right?
Sure, let's say that.
Yeah.
But yeah, so hundreds of years ago, let's say that. But I want it's Middle Ages, right? So it's probably like, let's see, 100 Years of War era, bubonic plague, 1400s, maybe 1200s. I'm terrible with history. So history buffs who are listening, we apologize. But like I said, it follows him as Henry V when his father is about to die. He's played here by Ben Mendelsohn, who has a very brief, but I would say memorable role as King Henry IV. Not in this movie as much as I would like, but at least he's in it. Joel Edgerton plays Falstaff, or Sir John, sorry. And he's the fictional, totally not a real person, but he's a fictional right-hand man of King Henry V. And Robert Pattinson, who I did not know was going to be in this, or maybe I knew, but I forgot. He plays the Dauphin, the French prince who provokes war with Henry almost immediately after he takes the throne. And I can't tell you, Will, how my world shattered almost, or like because I'm watching the scene where he first appears and I'm like, wait, is that Robert Pattinson? And it was,
because he's like putting on a French accent in this, and that's like a blonde wig and stuff, right?
Oh yeah, he is. And he is hamming it up. It is like a totally different movie. I don't even say it's a criticism, because I think it was some much needed levity. Put it that way.
Yeah, I saw the clip where he was describing a certain part of Timothée Chalamet's body that is floating around on Twitter.
Yes, that's an interesting one. So I should say, if there's a really great thing you can say about this movie, it's that it's never trying to be anything that it's not. If you watch the trailer, I mean, the trailer is spot on the tone of this movie, what you're in for. It really presents itself honestly as, okay, it's a male-centric, middle-aged, folklorish tale with really great performances, thrilling set pieces, immersive set design, no women, which is kind of, I mean, there's women in here. There's a few female, I guess you have to call them cameos, but there's one female character with like actual dialogue or a role. And I won't give it away, but it doesn't show up until really late in the film. And it comes from Lily Rose Depp, the daughter of Johnny Depp. And I truly wanted so much more of this character. That's when this movie really comes to life for me. It's like, oh my word, this is what this movie is missing. But either way, the film kind of suffers a little bit from its own source material in the way that it just doesn't have that gendered perspective by design. And it's so weird to me because it's like the filmmakers almost seem like they feel like they have to avoid bending the source material to allow for that sort of thing, even though it's Shakespeare. Like, you don't have to go exactly with what happened, and they don't. But when it comes to like not really having women in it, that's where that's where we have to be realistic. So I just thought that was very unfortunate. But all those flaws aside, this is a well-made film. I actually do think it's worth seeking out if you are familiar with the story, or if you're curious about it and you're like, who's Henry V? It's kind of an interesting Shakespearean perspective from his story that might get you interested in his story, the real life of it, or the real version of it. As a piece of art, it doesn't contribute much of anything new or didactic. A lot of it's going to be forgotten by most people down the road, but it's enjoyable while you're watching it. It represents something that I really like about Netflix films, which is how they're willing to make films that other studios won't even touch, namely the big ones, like last year's Outlaw King, because the audience they want to see it. They're just not really willing to go out and see movies like this on the big screen, which is a shame, of course. But if you're going to watch this, I'd rather people watch this film at all. And the fact that you can watch it on your own smaller big screen, I think it's really a tour de force. I don't think it's as it's kind of funny because when you watch it, it's hard not to separate some of the set pieces that Miguel Sapochnik has been doing with Game of Thrones, or had been doing. And there's the big climactic scene kind of echoes a lot of the Battle of the Bastards, which is at this point now kind of a culturally relevant episode of television at this point, even if you've never watched Game of Thrones. And this one really echoes a lot of that show in that way, at least. And it's cool to see. It kind of makes me think that Game of Thrones is sort of revitalized like big screen action epics of this sort of nature, like the Middle Ages version of it.
Is Battle of the Bastards the one that the Always Sunny guy directed?
No.
Are you sure?
Miguel Sapochnik?
Well, who's the guy? Let me think of it.
I don't know, but I'm pretty sure Miguel Sapochnik is not from Always Sunny. Unless I just...
There's a director who did stuff for Game of Thrones. I thought he did like a big action scene with a dragon.
You'd have to give me the name, because I'm not as familiar with Always Sunny, so...
Yeah. Very similar, Always Sunny and The King.
There are so many directors for Game of Thrones, it can be hard to keep track.
Yeah, that's true.
Miguel...
Michael Shackman? Or Matt Shatman.
Oh, okay. Shackman. Yeah, he did I don't remember if it was a dragon thing. I think he did some stuff in the 3rd season, maybe. But
he did The Spoils of War and Eastwatch.
Okay. Yeah.
That means nothing to me, but I don't know what that means to you.
That's the 7th and 8th season. Okay. So interesting. Yeah. I not really. Spoils of War does involve a big dragon scene, so that's probably what you're thinking of. Yeah.
Okay. Then never mind.
And it's quite good. But yes, that is The King. It's Timothée Chalamet doing a period drama with some cool action scenes. There really isn't much more to say. There's not much deeper to go off of it than that. And I think it's pretty competent. I give it a B-. I think that it does what it sets out to do. I just think it's really held back from being anything new or interesting or original. And if not for Lily Rose Depp, who I'm very curious about now, and in terms of like some of the films that she has coming down the line, what we may see from her again. And I think this one, easy watch on Netflix. It's pretty long, like 2.5 hours, but I definitely wasn't bored by it. And I felt like by the time it ended, I thought it was a nice conclusion. I thought I was going to be really disappointed with this film, but I think the ending is, it's good. It ends on a note that I think makes the whole movie feel like it does have a point, because I was struggling with that along the way of like, it kind of like with Marriage Story, funny enough. It's like, is this all really worth it? Are we really getting anything here? And we get there eventually. And I think that because it's Netflix, definitely something you can watch easily and maybe like enough. So that's The King. And I know you're probably going to catch this one this week, Will?
Maybe. Did you give a grade for this?
B-.
Oh, B-. Okay. Yeah, I mean, like I said, what I've seen from the director, I really like. I didn't see War Machine, which I heard kind of middling things about, unfortunately. But yeah, I might check this out just because I'm curious with the cast and the director and the subject matter. And like you said, it's on Netflix, so it's not like a commitment for me to check it out. But yeah, I was going to see it this weekend, just didn't get the time, but I'm curious. So I'll try to make a point to see it.
All right. We have one last review for you all this week, and that is Western Stars. This is the Bruce Springsteen documentary about his own album, but I think he co-directed this, correct?
That is correct.
All right. Well, tell us all about it.
Yeah, I'm trying to find the other director who is... it's Tom
Zimney.
Tom Zimney, yeah. So he directed this with Tom Zimney, who I think he's collaborated with before on music videos and different projects that he's worked on. This film is, like you said, it's a companion to his album that came out this summer, but it's also a continuation of a couple things that he's been working on throughout the years. So he's in this sort of twilight period of his life. Like he's, I believe, like late 60s at this point, maybe early 70s. I don't know exactly what age Bruce Springsteen is at this point, but I think he's at a point where he is very much like reflecting back on his life and his legacy. He is exactly 70. He just, I think, like, you know, like those twilight years where he's contemplative. He wrote an autobiography. He did a play on Broadway based on his life. That was a Netflix special at one point, Springsteen on Broadway. And this film is kind of serving as a sort of trilogy, I guess, to those two components, where he is talking about the themes of his album, but also just exploring his own life, his own relationships, his family dynamics, his career, his music, and just seeing how like they weave together to make this album that is, in some cases, it's very character driven. It's him using his experiences to speak for other characters, because he's always had that storytelling dynamic of his career where he wants to tell stories in a somewhat cinematic fashion. I was just reading an interview where he was saying that like Badlands and Night of the Hunter were some of the inspirations for his earlier song work, which I found pretty intriguing. So I guess he's always had that cinematic appreciation that he wanted to incorporate into his music and now into this film. And it results in, you know, it's one of those things where I think your mileage may vary on it. It's one of those things where if you like Bruce Springsteen, it's a well done music doc concert film that it is what it is. Like I think it's well done. I think it's enjoyable. When I saw it was in Dolby, which I wasn't anticipating, and definitely added to the immersion of it. Even though it is filmed in this kind of small barn area, they had like a 30-piece orchestra with it, so it's this nice balance of very intimate but also very grandiose. And I think they complement that well enough in its film presentation with these, these huge landscape shots, but also him just kind of speaking about his life and his artistic process and stuff. And like I said, I mean, there's been a lot of Springsteen content right now. I don't know if our listeners are super into Springsteen or not. So again, like if you like his stuff, I think you'll appreciate this. I enjoy his stuff. I'm not like a mega fan or anything, but I like it. I got to see it with my dad, who's a big Springsteen fan, and he enjoyed it a lot. And so, I enjoyed it. I gave it a B. I like it for what it was, but I don't think it's anything that's going to particularly stick with me outside of a nice family bonding theater experience.
Is that a B for Boss or a B for Bruce?
Yeah. B for, it's either one. I'll say
B
Boss.
for bonding with your dad.
Yeah, B for bonding.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah, we've talked about Bruce Springsteen kind of on the show before, funny enough, when we talked about Blinded by the Light, film that I didn't really care for, and I don't get it. I want to like Bruce Springsteen as much as everyone else, and he's like my Stephen King, but for music. I don't know.
Have you listened to Nebraska?
I think so. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I listen.
Yeah, I like Nebraska. That's probably like the album.
I listen to almost all of his music, and
okay.
Out of obligation though, and also
obligation in what sense?
Because I want to like him,
obligation
so I listen
to him.
No obligation to music at large, and having taste, and I feel like people love him for a reason. I just never been able to click with his music. I watched like a documentary about his life, and I was like, oh, this will be interesting, and I just wasn't interested by his life, and I was like, man, I am just not the kind of person that likes Bruce Springsteen, and I just have to accept it. So that's all right.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't know. I mean, I think there is something universal about his music, but it's also very generational, and I think
you're an old soul.
Like I said, what's that?
I say you're an old soul.
Yeah, I guess in some respects, but yeah, I like I said, I mean, as I mentioned earlier, I think it ultimately just depends on how much you like Bruce Springsteen. I think it's fine for what it is, but your appreciation of it will be impacted by what you think of the artist. And I can't see you getting much out of this film for that reason. But as it stands, I think it's a pretty poetic, somber, bittersweet film that definitely is intriguing if you want to know about like the artistic process and how like a major artist comes up with their music and how they tie it into the themes that they've woven throughout their career. But, by no means substantial. It's really, a kind of glossy promotion for the album. So it's kind of interesting that this came out the same week as that Kanye West IMAX thing, Jesus is King, which is kind of doing something similar from what I've been told. I didn't get a chance to see that, but yeah, it's enjoyable. It's a fine documentary. I think it premiered TIFF to pretty good notices, but like I said, your mileage will vary. And if you don't really have a fond appreciation for the boss, then I can't see you getting much out of this, Sean.
Yeah, I probably won't see it, but I do not begrudge anyone who does. So that's Western Stars. Next week, we're going to be talking about, I think Dr. Sleep will be our big review, but we're also going to be checking out, as I mentioned before, The Irishman, Ford v. Ferrari. Not sure how we're going to weave that into either this week's episode or a future one. Just stay tuned for that. And I don't know if I want to see Last Christmas, and I know you already saw Playing with Fire. Those are the other two films coming out. And then there's Midway. Are you going to see Midway?
Yeah, I have a screen for that tomorrow.
Okay. So we'll be able to cover a lot of the wide releases here, but sort of just depends on what we're able to squeeze into the show. And then also Honey Boy, which I've talked about in the show as well, just hit limited release. I'm going to hold off on that until at least Will sees it, since I have already talked about it on the show. So you can always go back to our Sundance conversation, I think, if you want to find what I thought of that movie, or my written review, which is on the Young Folks. So that'll do it, though, for this week's episode of Cinemaholics. Please consider leaving us a review on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Stitcher, anywhere you love podcasts. Help us get the word out on the show. You can find our social media, Facebook, Twitter, all of that, and our email, cinemahawkspodcast@gmail.com. All that stuff is in the show notes, along with our Patreon. It's all there. And thank you so much for listening to the show. And don't forget to answer the question of the week on cinemahawks.com. And yeah, it's been a good one. We'll see you all next week. or we'll time travel from the future to go kill the release of this podcast because something horribly, horribly has gone wrong. But until then, from the Internet California, I'm John Agroni.
Oh, I didn't do my Arnold thing, so I gotta do that now. From the Internet Pennsylvania, I'm Will Ashton.
We'll see you next time.